I thought my mother-in-law Carol was just a classic overbearing matriarch. I thought her constant critiques and passive-aggressive sighs were just the price of admission for family harmony. But as I stood in my sun-drenched kitchen, I realized she wasn't just difficult, she was a saboteur. Before that phone call, my life was quiet, orderly. I took pride in it. Our house, the one Mark and I bought 20 years ago, was my sanctuary. I loved the way the morning light hit the oak floors, and the familiar weight of my favorite ceramic mug, filled with coffee that smelled of dark chocolate and almonds. Mark would kiss my forehead before he left for work, his hand briefly on my waist, a familiar ritual. Lately, though, his touch felt automatic. His kisses landed a little too quickly. I told myself it was just the stress of our daughter Chloe's upcoming wedding. The wedding planning had started with such joy. Chloe and her fiancé, Liam, a wonderful, kind-eyed artist, were a perfect match. But then Carol began to insert herself. She'd arrive for our planning sessions unannounced, her expensive perfume preceding her like a warning siren. She'd purse her lips at Chloe's choices, her disapproval a physical presence in the room. I remember her looking at the brochure for the rustic barn venue Chloe had fallen in love with. She held it between two fingers as if it were a dirty tissue. "It's quaint," she'd murmured, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I just hope my friends won't find the dirt floors too much of a bother." I saw the flicker of doubt in Chloe's eyes. Mark just squeezed my shoulder. "She means well, honey," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "She's just from a different generation." If you've ever had to bite your tongue for the sake of family, you know the feeling. And if you've ever wondered what happens when you finally stop, well, you'll want to stay with me for this. That afternoon, the peace I'd worked so hard to maintain was shattered. The phone felt unnaturally cold and heavy in my hand, a dead weight pulling me down. On the other end, the caterer, a man named Mr. Dubois with a gentle French accent, was apologizing. His voice was tinny through the speaker, a tiny, distant sound in my suddenly silent world. "I am so sorry, madame," he said, "but we received your cancellation email last Tuesday. The deposit, it is non-refundable, of course." The grandfather clock in the hall began to tick. Each tick was a hammer striking an anvil, loud and deliberate. My breath caught in my chest, a sharp, painful knot just below my ribs. The lemon-scented cleaner I just used on the countertops, a scent I usually found so refreshing, suddenly smelled cloying and synthetic, like a cheap air freshener in a funeral home. My knuckles were white where I gripped the phone. Cancellation email? My voice was a hoarse whisper I didn't even recognize. I never sent a cancellation email. There was a pause. I could hear the faint rustle of paper on his end. "But it came from the official wedding planning address," he said, his tone hesitant. "The one ending in chloeandliam.com? My blood ran cold. A wave of icy dread washed over me, starting at the base of my skull and spreading down my spine. Only 3 people had access to that account: me, my daughter Chloe, and my husband, Mark. And I knew, with a certainty that felt like a shard of ice piercing my heart, that neither Chloe nor I had sent it. The final, damning piece of the puzzle clicked into place when he read the signature on the email. "It is signed," he said, warmly, "Carol." My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the granite island to keep from falling, the cold stone a shock against my skin. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. The sheer, calculated malice of it stole my breath. This was a declaration of war, and in that moment, a switch flipped inside me. The accommodating, peacekeeping wife and mother-in-law vanished. In her place stood a woman filled with an ice-cold, protective rage. Key summary: the protagonist is in her kitchen, reeling from a phone call that has just revealed her mother-in-law, Carol, has secretly cancelled the caterer for her daughter's wedding. The double hook used is, "I thought my mother-in-law, Carol, was just a classic, overbearing matriarch. But as I stood in my sun-drenched kitchen, I realized she wasn't just difficult, she was a saboteur." The red flags planted in this part are Carol's condescending critique of the wedding venue, quaint, dirt floors, and the protagonist's husband, Mark, immediately making excuses for his mother's behavior. "She means well, honey," revealing a pattern of enabling. Clattering. The sound of my phone hitting the cold granite countertop was unnaturally loud in the sudden suffocating silence of my kitchen. For a single stretched-out second, I just stared at it, a black rectangle on the gray stone. My heart wasn't racing. It was doing something far worse. It was beating in slow, heavy thuds that I felt in my throat, each one a cold reminder of the word the caterer had used: cancellation. My gaze drifted to the window over the sink. A bird landed on the feeder, picking at seeds, oblivious. The world outside was still moving, still normal. But inside my house, inside my head, a fault line had just cracked open. I knew, with a certainty that bypassed all logic, that I couldn't just scream. I couldn't call Mark and accuse. He would have 1,000 excuses for her. She was confused. She was trying to help. It was a misunderstanding. I needed proof. Something he couldn't explain away with a placating smile and a gentle hand on my arm. My feet felt like lead as I walked out of the kitchen, down the hall to my small home office. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the low hum of my laptop on the desk. I sat down, the worn leather of the chair creaking under my weight. My hands were trembling slightly as I opened the web browser. The login page for the wedding email account glowed in the dim room. ChloeandLiam.com. It had seemed so hopeful when we created it. I typed in the password, a combination of their initials and the wedding date. My finger hovered over the enter key, and I pressed it. Incorrect password. A cold dread, slick and oily, washed over me. I typed it again, slowly, deliberately, checking each character. Incorrect password. Someone had locked me out. Someone had changed it. My breath hitched. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My fingers, now clumsy with adrenaline, fumbled to click the forgot password link. I entered my personal email as the recovery address, praying it hadn't been changed too. A second later, my phone, which I'd retrieved from the kitchen, pinged on the desk beside me. The sound made me jump. With a new, temporary password, I was in. The inbox looked pristine. Unread messages from vendors, a confirmation for a cake tasting, an RSVP from a cousin. For a dizzying moment, I thought maybe I had lost my mind. Maybe Mr. Dubois had made a mistake. But my gut, a tight, angry knot in my stomach, screamed at me. It told me to look deeper. My eyes scanned the folders on the left side of the screen. Inbox, sent, drafts, and then trash. I clicked on it. The page loaded, and my world stopped. It wasn't one email. It was a list, a hit list. My eyes landed on the first one, sent 2 weeks ago. The recipient, Blossoms and Blooms Florist. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. The words were polite, professional, and utterly venomous. Dear Sarah, it read, after careful consideration, we've decided to reevaluate our floral budget, and we'll be going in a different direction. Thank you for your time. It was signed, warmly, Carol. I felt a wave of nausea. I clicked on the next. A cancellation to the string quartet. The next, to the photographer Chloe had been dreaming of since she was 16. And then, there it was. The email to Mr. Dubois. All of them, sent over a period of 3 weeks. A systematic, cold-blooded demolition of my daughter's wedding. All of them signed by Carol. I leaned back, the air sucked from my lungs. The glow of the monitor was the only light, casting long shadows across the room. This was premeditated. This was a campaign. The front door clicked open. "Honey, I'm home!" Mark's cheerful voice echoed down the hall. I slammed the laptop shut, the plastic clap echoing the frantic beat of my heart. He appeared in the doorway, smiling, his briefcase in his hand. "Tough day? You look pale." I forced my lips into something that was supposed to be a smile. "Just a headache," I managed to say, my voice sounding thin and strange to my own ears. He came over, kissing the top of my head. His touch, usually a comfort, felt like a brand. "You should lie down," he said, his brow furrowed with concern. "By the way, Mom called. She wanted to know if we needed any help with the seating chart. She's so excited." The sheer, unmitigated gall of it sent a shock of ice through my veins. I almost broke. I almost threw the laptop at his head and screamed at him, screamed what his mother was. But I saw the placid, loving ignorance in his eyes. He would defend her. He would find a way to make it my fault, to say I was overreacting. And I knew, in that chilling moment, that an accusation wasn't enough. I needed an execution. That night I lay in bed, my body rigid, pretending to be asleep. I listened to the sound of Mark's steady breathing beside me. Around 2 in the morning, his phone, lying face up on his nightstand, buzzed. The screen lit up the darkness for a few seconds, illuminating a text message notification. My eyes shot open. I could just make out the name, Mom. And under it, a preview of the message. "She can't prove anything. Don't worry. Just act normal." He stirred, his hand instinctively reaching out and flipping the phone over so the screen was dark. He sighed in his sleep and rolled away from me. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it felt like I was drowning. He knew. He was in on it. Maybe not the planning, but the cover-up. He was protecting her, not us. The next morning, I was a ghost moving through my own home. While making coffee, my hand brushed against something behind the sugar bowl. A small, yellow, sticky note had fallen onto the counter. It was Carol's looping, ostentatious handwriting. On it was the name of the band, the Downtown Collective, and their phone number. She hadn't even bothered to hide her tracks. She was that arrogant, that certain she would get away with it. I almost told him we should wait. I almost told him we should just call everything off and elope. The thought of fighting his mother, and by extension him, was exhausting. I stood in the kitchen, holding the damning sticky note, and I almost gave up. But then I heard Chloe's voice in my head, the pure, unadulterated joy in her shriek when Liam proposed. I thought of her face in that dressing room, the light dimming in her eyes because of Carol's casual cruelty. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that settled deep in my bones. Later that afternoon, I heard Mark's hushed voice coming from the garage. I crept to the door and listened. "I told you to be more careful, Mum," he was whispering, his voice tight with panic. "No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Just let me handle it from here. Don't call the vendors anymore, please." He was trying to contain the damage, to manage his mother's chaos while keeping me in the dark. He wasn't my partner. He was her accomplice. That was the final piece. I walked back to the office, the morning sun now streaming through the window. I sat down, opened the laptop, and navigated back to the trash folder. My hand was steady as I moved the mouse. I clicked on the first email. Then, I clicked print. The printer on the shelf whirred to life, a low, mechanical growl. It spit out the first page. I did it again for the next email, and the next, and the next. For over an hour, the only sound in the house was the whirring of the printer and the soft thud of each new page landing in the tray. Each one, a nail for Carol's coffin. Key summary. The protagonist, after the shocking phone call, immediately begins a covert investigation. She discovers the password to the shared wedding email has been changed, and after resetting it, uncovers a series of cancellation emails sent by her mother-in-law, Carol, to the florist, band, and photographer, all located in the trash folder. The near-miss moment occurs when she almost confronts her husband, Mark, but his oblivious mention of a cheerful call from Carol solidifies her decision to build an undeniable case instead of starting a fight she would lose. Several red flags are planted. She sees a late-night text on Mark's phone from Carol instructing him to act normal, finds a handwritten note from Carol with a vendor's number, and overhears Mark on a hushed phone call confirming his complicity in the cover-up. The part ends with her methodically printing every single email, preparing her evidence for the inevitable confrontation. The final page slid into the printer tray with a soft thud. The whirring of the machine died, leaving a profound and ringing silence in its wake. I stood in the dim light of my home office, the stack of warm paper in my hands feeling heavier than a tombstone. Each sheet was a nail in a coffin I was building for my marriage, for the family I thought I had. I organized the pages, the damning emails aligning in a neat chronological narrative of destruction. 1, 2, 3. Florist, band, photographer, the caterer for 200 guests. My fingers trembled as I reached for the small, cream-colored note I'd found on Mark's nightstand, the one with the vendor's number scrawled on it in Carol's looping cursive. I had tucked it into my pocket, a piece of ancillary evidence. Now, I placed it on top of the printed emails. My mission was to build an undeniable case, and this was part of it. I needed to bind them together to present this horror as a single, unified exhibit. I walked out of the office, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The house felt vast and cold, a stage for a play I never wanted to be in. I needed a stapler. Mark kept one in his study. I never went in there. It was his sanctuary, filled with his books, his awards, the faint scent of leather and old paper. It was the one room in the house that felt entirely his. My hand hesitated on the cool brass of the doorknob. A tremor ran up my arm. I was crossing a line. But I had crossed a dozen lines in the past 24 hours. What was one more? I pushed the door open. The air was different. It was his scent, yes, but underneath it, faint and cloying, was the unmistakable aroma of Carol's perfume. Gardenia. A scent I had grown to associate with veiled insults and condescending smiles. She had been in here. Recently. The thought sent a chill across my skin. My eyes scanned the room, the mahogany desk, the shelves lined with perfectly ordered books. Nothing seemed out of place. The stapler was right where it should be, next to a pen holder. I could take it and leave. I could go back to my own office, assemble my proof, and wait for the explosion. It would be the sensible thing to do. My hand reached for the stapler, but my gaze snagged on his briefcase, propped against the leg of the desk. It was a dark brown leather, old and worn, but meticulously cared for. He took it everywhere. It was an extension of him, and it was never left unlocked. A sudden, insane impulse seized me. The emails were the what, but they weren't the why. The sheer scale of the sabotage felt too grand for simple jealousy. There was a piece missing, a dark corner of this conspiracy I hadn't illuminated yet. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I knelt on the plush carpet, my knees sinking into the pile. I pulled the briefcase onto my lap. The two small brass combination dials gleamed under the desk lamp. Of course, it was locked. I tried his birthday. Nothing. My birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary. The dials refused to turn. I felt a surge of frustration and despair. This was crazy. I was snooping, acting like a paranoid fool. Then I heard it. The low rumble of a car engine, the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Mark. He was home. He was an hour early. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. My breath hitched. I had to get out. Now. I shoved the briefcase back against the desk leg, my movements clumsy and loud in the dead quiet of the room. I stood up too quickly, a wave of dizziness washing over me. I had to leave. I had to act normal. I took one last frantic look around the room to make sure I hadn't disturbed anything. My eyes landed on a silver frame on the corner of the desk. It was a photo of a 10-year-old Mark, grinning, standing beside his father. And in that split second, a memory surfaced. Mark, laughing, telling me the combination to his first bicycle lock, the one his father had given him. He said it was the most important date in the world, his father's birthday, August 21, 1962. The sound of a key sliding into the front door lock echoed from the hall. There was no time. My fingers, numb and shaking, flew back to the briefcase. I didn't think. I just acted. 8, 2, 1, 6, 2. The click of the latch releasing was a gunshot in the silent room. My heart stopped. The front door opened and closed. "Honey, I'm home!" Mark's voice, cheerful and oblivious, drifted down the hall. I held my breath, frozen. I couldn't move. I could hear his footsteps, the rustle of him taking off his coat. He was coming this way. I had seconds. My hand dove into the briefcase. I ignored the files and the laptop. My fingers brushed against something else. A folder. It was thick, bound in dark blue leather, with a gold-embossed crest I didn't recognize. It felt heavy, important. I pulled it out. The footsteps were closer now, at the end of the hall. I flipped the folder open on the desk. The paper was thick, creamy, and cold to the touch. The words swam before my eyes, dense blocks of legal text. But the header was clear. It read, "The Harrington Family Trust." My blood went cold. I scanned the page, my eyes darting, desperate. I saw Chloe's name, and then I saw the highlighted section. A clause. Clause 11, Section B. My eyes traced the words, but my brain refused to process them. Contingent upon a stable marital union with a partner of suitable financial standing. Spouse must possess a postgraduate degree from an accredited list of institutions. Failure to meet these conditions shall result in the forfeiture of the beneficiary's access to the principal trust until the dissolution of said unsuitable union. It was a contract for my daughter's life, a set of rules designed to control her from beyond the grave, written by a long-dead patriarch. But this wasn't history. The footsteps were right outside the door now. Tucked behind the trust document was another set of papers, stapled together. The paper was thin, cheap, a photocopy. The title read, Strategy Memorandum, Re. C. Harrington and L. Morrow. It was from a law firm. It was a plan. A step-by-step guide to systematically dismantling a wedding to prove a union was unstable. It suggested creating financial distress, fostering emotional turmoil, isolating the bride from her support system. It was a playbook for what Carol had done. And there, at the bottom of the first page, scrawled in the margin, in Carol's elegant, hateful script, was a note. A note from my husband. Mark, this is the only way. We create the chaos. The wedding is called off. She is protected. She will thank us later. Stick to the plan. The doorknob began to turn. The sound was deafening, a slow metallic groan sealing my fate. I didn't look away from the page. I didn't try to hide. The words burned into my soul, a brand of absolute betrayal. He wasn't just an accomplice. He was a co-conspirator. This was his plan, too. The paper in my hand did not tremble. My breathing was even. Everything inside me went still and silent and cold as ice. The door clicked open. I slowly lifted my head, my eyes meeting the doorway, and saw a stranger where my husband used to be. Key summary. The discovery happened when the protagonist, driven by a nagging suspicion after finding a handwritten note, entered her husband Mark's forbidden study. The second near miss occurred when Mark arrived home early and she was about to flee but remembered a key date, his father's birthday, which she used to unlock his briefcase just as he walked in the door. The specific physical evidence found was a leather-bound folder containing the family trust document with a cruel clause about her daughter's marriage and a horrifying legal strategy memo outlining a plan to sabotage the wedding, complete with a handwritten note from her mother-in-law, Carol, to Mark, confirming his full complicity in the financial and emotional plot. My fingers went numb as I snapped the brass latches of the briefcase shut, the click echoing in the sudden, suffocating silence of the study. I shoved it back into its slot beneath the desk just as Mark's shadow fell across the doorway, his keys jingling a cheerful, sickening rhythm. He smiled, a mask of normalcy that now looked grotesque. "There you are," he said, his voice a warm, familiar lie. "I was wondering where you'd gone." I forced my lips into a shape that resembled a smile, my heart a frantic bird beating against my ribs. The weight of the leather folder I just photographed with my phone felt like a physical tumor in my gut. "Just tidying up," I heard myself say, my voice a stranger's. "You left your briefcase unlocked again." I walked past him, my shoulder barely brushing his, the brief contact feeling like a jolt of electricity. That night, sleep was an impossible country. I lay perfectly still, timing my breaths to the slow, even rhythm of the man beside me, a man who had co-authored the destruction of our daughter's future. Every gentle snore was a fresh betrayal. At 3 a.m, I slipped out of bed. The house was a tomb, silent except for the low, constant hum of the refrigerator. In my office, I didn't turn on the overhead light, preferring the single, focused beam of my desk lamp. It cast long, distorted shadows across the walls, turning the familiar room into a command center. One by one, I transferred the 217 photographs from my phone to a new encrypted hard drive. Then I began to print. The whir and click of the printer was the only sound, a mechanical heartbeat in the darkness. Page after page slid into the tray, each one a piece of the conspiracy. The trust document, its clauses like coiled snakes. The legal memo, a step-by-step guide to psychological warfare. And Carol's spidery, triumphant handwriting, the final nail in the coffin of my old life. I handled the papers with a reverence typically reserved for sacred texts, placing each one into a clear plastic sleeve. The stack grew, heavy and dense. It was the physical manifestation of their deceit, and I held it in my hands until the first hint of dawn bled through the blinds. 2 days later, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of a downtown skyscraper. The chair was hard, black leather, and the air smelled of expensive cleaning products and ambition. Across a vast mahogany table sat Juliana Albright, a litigator whose reputation was as sharp and unforgiving as her tailored grey suit. I'd found her after 48 hours of sleepless, obsessive research, seeking out the most ruthless family trust attorney in the state. I didn't need a peacemaker. I needed a predator. I pushed a heavy binder of documents across the polished table. She didn't say a word. She simply opened it and began to read. I watched her eyes, missing nothing. They were a cool, analytical blue, scanning the legal memo, then the trust document, then lingering on the photograph of Carol's handwritten note. For 20 minutes, the only sound was the whisper of her turning pages. The silence was more terrifying than any shouting match. Finally, she closed the binder, her fingers steepled. "They were thorough," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "And arrogant." She looked at me, her gaze direct. "Your husband's complicity isn't just confirmed by this note. It's structural. The strategy memo outlines actions only he could take. Financial transfers, access to personal schedules, private conversations. Carol was the strategist, but he was the operative." Miss Albright gave me a list. It wasn't a list of suggestions, it was a list of commands. My life became a series of clandestine operations, conducted under the guise of wedding errands and household management. While Mark was at the gym, I was in his study, installing a keystroke logger on his desktop computer. While he was in the shower, I was using a forensic software kit Miss Albright's office had couriered to me to create a mirror image of his phone's data. The process was sickeningly intimate. I saw his deleted texts, his call logs, his web history. I felt like an archaeologist excavating my own grave. The real work began with the finances. I spent 3 nights in a row at the dining room table, surrounded by stacks of bank statements going back 5 years. The smell of cold coffee and paper filled the air. My world shrank to columns of numbers, my eyes burning from the screen of my laptop. I was looking for a ghost. A payment to the law firm, Graves, Donnelly, and Finch, that had authored the sabotage memo. There was nothing. They were too smart for that. Mark and Carol wouldn't use a direct, traceable payment. I pretended everything was normal. I discussed floral arrangements with Mark over dinner, my voice even and calm, while the knowledge of his treachery screamed in my head. I listened to him talk about his day at work, every word a lie, every smile a performance. The psychological toll was immense. I felt a constant low-grade tremor in my hands. But the grief was being burned away by something else, something colder and harder. A diamond-hard rage was crystallizing in my chest. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a hunter, patiently tracking my prey through a jungle of their own making. They thought I was weak. They thought I was distracted by wedding planning. They had no idea I was building a cage for them, piece by meticulous piece. The fatal error came on a Thursday afternoon. It wasn't a hidden transaction. It was one that had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. A recurring monthly payment for $950 from our joint checking account to a company called Argent Strategic Solutions. The memo line simply read, "Portfolio Management." I had seen it 1,000 times and thought nothing of it. Mark had told me it was a boutique firm that managed a small, aggressive portion of his retirement fund. But now, the name Argent felt wrong. It felt slick. It felt like them. My hands trembled as I looked up the company. It had a generic website full of stock photos of smiling executives and vague promises of synergistic growth. There was no mention of financial management. Its services were listed as dispute resolution, strategic communications, and legacy protection. It was a crisis management firm, a fixer. My heart hammered against my ribs. I picked up my phone, my throat dry. I dialed the number on their website. A crisp, professional voice answered. Argent Solutions, how may I direct your call? I took a breath, channeling the iciest version of myself. Hello, I said, my voice steady. I'm calling on behalf of Mark Sterling. I'm his executive assistant, just confirming the details for his monthly retainer payment. There was a pause, the sound of typing. Of course, the receptionist said. That's for the CHL matter, correct? My blood ran cold. CHL, Chloe. Her grandfather's name was Henry. Liam. CHL, Chloe, Henry, Liam. It was a code. Yes, that's the one, I said, my voice a whisper. The receptionist, oblivious, continued. Perfect. The account is in good standing. Is there anything else I can help you with? I hung up without another word. I stared at the wall, the phone slipping from my grasp. It wasn't just a plan to sabotage a wedding. It was a 3-year, fully funded operation. An ongoing project to manage, manipulate, and control my daughter's life, paid for with my money. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. They had hidden their conspiracy not in the shadows, but on line 12 of our joint bank statement. And in that moment, I knew I had them. The question was no longer what they had done, but the full, terrifying scope of how long they had been doing it. Key summary. The investigation began the moment after the discovery, with the protagonist meticulously scanning the evidence while pretending everything was normal for her husband, Mark. She sought professional help from a ruthless litigator, Miss Albright, who directed her to conduct a deep forensic dive into digital devices and 5 years of financial records. The antagonist's fatal error was the discovery of a recurring monthly payment from their joint bank account to a crisis management firm coded as Portfolio Management. A phone call to the firm confirmed this retainer was for the CHL matter, a code for Chloe, Henry, and Liam, proving a long-term, funded conspiracy. It is now confirmed that Mark and Carol have been actively working with a legal and strategic team for years to control Chloe's life, but the full extent of this operation and who else might be involved remains to be uncovered. The heavy manila folder from Miss Albright's office felt like a slab of granite in my hands. I walked into my own home as if I were a trespasser. The air was still and thick with the scent of brewing coffee and 20 years of shared history, all of it now a lie. Mark was at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone, a picture of domestic tranquility. He looked up and smiled, a casual, easy smile that turned my stomach to ice. He had no idea the world was about to end. I didn't return the smile. I placed the folder on the polished granite between us. The sound was a dull, final thud in the quiet room. "What's that?" he asked, his voice still light. I opened it. The first page was a bank statement, a line item highlighted in yellow. Portfolio Management, I said, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion I was feeling. A recurring payment, $10,000 a month, for 5 years. I don't recall ever approving a $60,000 annual expense for our portfolio. He stiffened, his casual posture gone. It's a discretionary fund I set up, high risk, high reward investments. I was going to surprise you. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. A year ago, I would have believed him. A week ago, I might have wanted to. Now, I just felt a deep, weary pity. I slid the next document across the island. It was the incorporation paper for the Portfolio Management firm, a crisis management and private investigation company. Their specialty isn't stocks, Mark, I said, my gaze unwavering. It's reputation laundering, strategic interference. I called them. They were very helpful once my lawyer mentioned the term fraudulent billing on a joint account. They have a file, a very thick one. It's coded. I leaned forward, the motion of a predator closing in. The code is CHL matter. I know what the C and the L stand for, Chloe and Liam. The color drained from his face, leaving a sickly gray pallor. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The confident husband I knew evaporated, replaced by a cornered, frightened stranger. You and your mother have been paying a team of professionals for 5 years to manage my daughter's life, I continued, my voice a low, cutting whisper. To what? Dig up dirt on Liam? To create obstacles? To manufacture chaos? The wedding emails were just the clumsy, desperate finale, weren't they? This has been your secret, full-time job. He started to stammer, to weave a new tapestry of excuses about protecting Chloe, about Carol's influence, about his love for me. The words were meaningless static. I held up a hand, and he fell silent. "There's just one thing I don't understand," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "The code. CHL, Chloe, Liam. Who is Henry?" That was the name that broke him. His eyes widened in pure, unadulterated panic. The final wall of his deception crumbled into dust. He slumped onto the stool, his head in his hands. His confession came out in a torrent of broken whispers. Henry was the son of one of Carol's oldest friends, a banker, stable. The plan, for 5 long years, wasn't just to break up Chloe and Liam. It was to maneuver her, through a campaign of subtle sabotage and psychological pressure, into the arms of a man they had chosen for her. A man who would secure the trust fund Carol so desperately wanted to control. My husband wasn't just a weak accomplice. He was an architect of his own daughter's arranged life. As if summoned by the sheer force of the betrayal, the doorbell rang. It was Carol, arriving for a lunch I had no memory of inviting her to, a triumphant smile on her face. She saw Mark's state, saw the folder, and her smile vanished. "What have you done?" she hissed at me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "It's over, Carol," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even me. "The retainers, the investigators, the CHL matter, Henry, we know everything." She looked at Mark, expecting him to defend her, to fight with her, but he wouldn't even look up. In that moment, she knew she was alone. Her rage was spectacular, a hurricane of insults and accusations. She called me a gold digger, a terrible mother, a snake. I just stood there and let the storm break against me. It couldn't touch me. When she finally ran out of breath, her face blotchy and her chest heaving, I delivered the sentence. "You will not attend the wedding. You will be legally removed as a trustee from Chloe's fund by the end of the month. And if you fight it, this folder and Mark's sworn testimony go to every member of this family. You will not contact my daughter again. You have lost your son. You have lost your granddaughter. You have lost." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. There was no begging, just the silent, sputtering engine of her own narcissism seizing up. She turned and walked out without another word. Then there was only Mark. He finally looked at me, his eyes swimming with tears. "I can fix this," he pleaded. "We can fix this. I love you." A hollow space had opened in my chest, where 20 years of trust used to be. I walked to my study and came back with another set of papers. I laid them on the island, on top of the evidence of his conspiracy. Divorce filings. "No, Mark," I said, my voice gentle but absolute. "We can't. Some things can't be fixed. You didn't just lie. You built an entirely different life beneath ours. Our marriage, our family, it was all just a cover for your real project." The 2 weeks that followed were a whirlwind of righteous fury. I executed the plan with military precision. The wedding was a fortress of joy, impenetrable. My cousin's report of Carol being turned away at the gate was a small bitter piece of justice. The legal action was swift. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Carol was stripped of her trusteeship without a fight. Her power was gone. It is 6 months later. The silence in my house is no longer heavy. It is clean. Mark moved out a week after the confrontation. Our therapy is not about reconciliation. It is about co-parenting a grown adult through the fallout of her father's betrayal. He is a ghost in his own life, haunted by the choices he made. I am sitting in Chloe and Liam's sun-drenched apartment. A magnificent painting of blush pink peonies, a testament to their victory, hangs on the wall. Chloe is laughing, a free and beautiful sound. She knows the truth, all of it, and she has forgiven me for the war I had to wage. I look at her, truly happy, and I feel a profound, unshakable peace. I learn that trust is not a foundation of stone, but a delicate sheet of glass. Once it is shattered into 1,000 pieces, you can spend a lifetime trying to glue it back together, but you will always see the cracks. You will always be afraid of it breaking again. The only real choice is to sweep up the shards and learn to live without the window. Is a family built on a beautiful lie better than a truth that shatters everything? Or is the most loving act to burn the whole rotten structure to the ground, just to save the people trapped inside? What would you have done in my shoes? Could you ever forgive a betrayal that was not a single act, but a 5-year conspiracy to control your child's life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Key summary. The resolution is a form of absolute justice. The protagonist confronts her husband, Mark, and mother-in-law, Carol, with evidence of a 5-year conspiracy to control her daughter's life. The main final twist is the discovery that the conspiracy wasn't just about sabotaging her daughter's fiancé, but about actively maneuvering her towards another man named Henry to secure a trust fund. The philosophical question posed is whether a beautiful lie is better than a shattering truth, and if the most loving act is sometimes to destroy a rotten family structure to save those within it. The call to action asks the audience if they could forgive a 5-year conspiracy to control their child's life.